Ask the Expert evening. And I'm just so very, very excited. We've had some fun looking at different ways to feed the birds in your backyard. And a lot of you said, wow, I've got new birds in my yard and I don't know what they are all the time. And we are just tickled that you've joined us tonight. And just want to say that we want to thank you for this. We're going to continue to have the Saturday events. I'll be on again Saturday at 10 a.m. and looking forward to being with all of you then. Central Standard Time. We'll be talking about taking the myths out of feeders. What feeder do we put what place to get what bird? What seed do we put in it? But tonight we're going to concentrate on how do we identify that bird. And when we set up an Ask the Expert night, man, there was nobody else came to my mind but the guy that be jumping on the screen with me here real quick. And his name's Stan Tekiela. He's the one, you guys seen me hold up his books. I told him my grandchildren have been raised. You've seen me use C as for Cardinal in every single session, I think. And when I look out the window, I use my Birds of Missouri field guide. And my God, we got playing cards with him. I just used this one this week, Birds of Prey. We've got a bunch of hawks, two different ones there. And I figured out what they were with Stan's guide. But I'm going to cause a lot of people in my family, in my office, to lose a bet. They swore I couldn't talk at least 5 minutes. And I'm so excited about the person coming on that I'm going to do nothing else but say, hey, folks, get ready. You're going to enjoy the next 30 minutes as Stan Tekiela gives you the guidelines on, hey, what's the basics of how you identify a bird, whether you've got a bird guide or not. Hey, Stan, welcome. It's great to have you tonight.
Thanks, Mel. It's so great to be on with you. It's actually a real honor to be with you, and I appreciate being part of the Ask the Expert night. I think this is kind of a fun evening ahead of us, too. So, it's interesting. A lot of people want to know. I lead bird trips. I lead dozens of bird trips every year. I of course, go out on my own all the time, and identifying birds is something that seems to really it's a challenge for some people, and it seems to be fairly natural for others. And so I thought tonight we would talk a little bit about how do we identify birds, whether they be in your backyard, local park, nature center, or wherever you're at. And, Mel, do you remember identifying your first birds?
Oh, wow. Of course, in this part of the world, it had to be that St. Louis Cardinal, but the other one I remember was by sound, and I can still remember it, is that loon that I heard at Audubon Camp. And I still think that's when God planted that seed in me that, hey, you need to be in the birding business someday.
Yeah. Well, loons are, of course, have an amazing call too. So, but most people, when they come to birds, they usually come to it via their backyard birds, or maybe they had an experience just like you, where they were out camping or they were doing something, and one bird caught their attention, and they thought, "Wow, what is that?" And that kind of was the gateway, the opening to identifying birds. And so when most people start identifying birds, they identify them by color. That's kind of the rudimentary thing. We all are pretty color sensitive, and we see birds and we see mainly the color of it right away. So when you're first identifying your birds, you see birds that are red or blue or whatever it may be, and that's how we identify them. And so with my field guides, I started out to identify the birds by color. If you're going to see a American goldfinch, for example, it's a yellow bird, and that's what jumps out at you. It kind of goes against the traditional way of learning birds, which is by family. And it's really a great way, I think, for people to start out. Because I know when you're first starting out, it can be rather overwhelming. Think about it. There's over 10,000 species of birds in the world, and we have about 900 of them here in North America. 900 birds is a lot. Most people's life lists won't even reach 900. So it's really a lot of birds to start out with, and so you need something to help filter that down. And really using colors is really a great way to do it. After all, you see a blue bird, you think of bluebirds or blue jays, or maybe indigo bunting or something like that too.
No, Stan, that's what I've always loved about your book. The first time I show it, sorry about that, folks, to everybody, it's that guide in the front, and then you just turn to that tab, and it makes it very, very simple for everyone. So I agree with the way I don't have to know every flycatcher. I just want to know the yellow one or the red one or the brown one in my backyard.
Yeah. Exactly. And, when we're talking about these things, maybe we can show the few of those examples I have. Like, for example, like a blue jay, with it being a blue bird, we're going to see, mainly blue when we see it. Now, there's a lot of white and there's a lot of black on those birds, and even gray on them. But you're going to see the predominant color is going to be blue, and so therefore you're going to kind of go to that blue section, and it's really easy to do that, and then kind of go from there. Or, for example, how about the northern cardinal? That's a real obvious bird that you should, most people can identify that because it's so bright, bright colored, and the male is at least bright red. Or the paraluxia. The paraluxia is kind of an interesting one. That is a fun bird to see. It's a bird of the America Southwest, and it's red, and it looks just like the cardinal too. So that's kind of a neat thing. And these colors are good cues to get started learning your birds. There's
You
your
betcha.
cardinal.
I tease everybody that, even where they don't have a world championship team like the Cardinals, that's the one to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly is. So after you've kind of got this basic color thing down, because there's a lot of black birds out there, there's a lot of brown birds out there, and gray ones and things like that. What's kind of the thing that most people look for when they are trying to identify their birds? Let's just say, as a beginner, you start by using color, and that color is kind of a crutch, if you will, to get you started, to get you hooked in and start learning those birds, and you can get a good solid several hundred species of birds that way. After that, you start doing things like learning the shapes of the birds. So you don't need to see the color, you can see the shape. And the shape is really an important part of identifying birds. I get this a lot when I'm leading photo tours. I'll get a glimpse of a bird, and just from that glimpse, I'm able to identify it. And people say, well, how did you know? And it's like, and it's those little things, the shape, the flight pattern, the way it's positioned, sitting upright, leaning forward, whatever it may be. All those things are clues to identifying those birds. And repetition is also another big part of this. Seeing a bird over and over again is really helpful in trying to learn your birds, overall for the future. Mel, you'd mentioned, just like that, a lot of the flycatchers look exactly the same. So it's a little in when you're trying to learn your birds, especially by families, flycatchers are really good. But there's a lot of tricky birds out there. For example, the blackbirds. People think, well, yeah, blackbirds. What do you think of when you think of blackbird? You think of grackle, right? You think of the grackles right away. And in fact, a lot of times people don't even realize that some of their very favorite birds are a type of blackbird. For example, the meadowlark is a type of blackbird, or the Baltimore Oriole is a type of blackbird. And so sometimes those shapes don't work for the families like it does for the flycatchers. So this is where the confusion starts getting in there. So once you've kind of gotten past this, you've done the color and you've kind of advanced a little bit, and you start using shapes and you start using, characteristics of the birds, then all of a sudden it starts getting a little muddier and a little harder to identify. So there's some really interesting things going on there too. Maybe we could, I think I sent in a couple of pictures, like the eastern phoebe or the great crested flycatcher are some good examples of those flycatchers that, so there's a great crested flycatcher, really doesn't look a lot, actually kind of looks like a blue jay, really, with that crest up and the long tail. So it looks like a flycatcher, but then it doesn't look like a flycatcher. So it's really kind of an interesting bird there too. There's your eastern phoebe.
There's the phoebe. That's the one that tells me it's spring every year.
Isn't that the truth? I love when those guys show up too, and they're just they oftentimes, for me, I'm up in the upper Midwest, and when they show up, they are right on the edge of being, maybe a little too,
Yep,
a little too risky, because the insects aren't out. There's a reason why they're called flycatchers. These guys are insectivorous. They eat bugs, and without those insects there in places like where I'm at, it could be pretty darn cold, and won't be any insects for them for quite a while too.
Yeah, they were like on overdrive. We're blessed to have one right where we sat and barbecue, and they were like, "Would you get out of my way? I got to get this baby fed a lot because it's going to get cold
Mhm.
tomorrow." You know.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting things there too. We talked about the blackbirds. I could spend all day talking about blackbirds. I think they're such a interesting group of birds. Some of the birds like the Baltimore oriole, maybe we could show that picture, and the orchard oriole, very interesting. Again, what is this? The 12th of May, and believe it or not, they haven't even shown up at my house yet. So it's they're running a little late this year in the upper Midwest for the
No, that's
Baltimore.
Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm in Minnesota, and they haven't even showed up here yet. In fact, I've only seen one hummingbird so far. 12th of May. Normally they're here about the 1st of May, and these guys are running almost 2 weeks late now. So
Oh wow.
every year is a little different than the year before, and that's something. So there's some interest. Show that orchard oriole too. That's another good
Next
looking
one.
bird also. Um, and these are all, like I said, part of the blackbird family, which is just, you know, the next level in learning your birds is learning your families. It seems a little daunting, but it kind of brings you to the next level of learning and being kind of more proficient in your birds. Then sometimes you can see birds, and just based on their characteristics, you can group them into a family. You may not know what it is, but you can group it into a family, and that helps out too. So. Um, do you use things like that, Mel, when you're identifying birds? Are you using things like the shape or the kind of the characteristics of it?
Well, I do the shape, absolutely, but I have to tell you, I'm spoiled. I'm more of just a backyard birder.
Yep.
I always
Hmm.
tell everybody that, and I use my trusty field guide. And then over the years, as I was learning, I use sound a lot. I used the old bird identifier years ago
Oh yeah.
when that was the first thing, and of course, you got Merlin and everything else out there nowadays. But I've
Yeah.
tended to be a little bit more just combination of sight and sound.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm learning on this program. And I've tell a lot of people that get me in the field, and I'm a very much a novelist. So I'm looking, I'm learning right with the crowd tonight as you go through this. So thank you for putting
Yeah.
it at a level that I can handle it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, kind of like I always see bird identification in somebody's career of identifying birds in different levels, different stratas. And they start out with that basic stuff, backyards, learning their colors, and then they go on to shapes, and then maybe even a little bit of a families. But there's other cues that help you identify your birds. For example, habitats. Habitats are very important in helping you to narrow down what kind of bird that is. Now, keep in mind, birds have wings and they know how to use them, so they can fly into different habitats. But habitat's a good thing to help you learn, what species, or taking a guess at what bird you're going to do. For example, let's look at the great blue heron, for example. Bring that one up. This is obviously a bird you're going to see mainly in wetlands, marshes, cattails, things like that, and that's its habitat. Now, having said that, it can be seen in other locations too. I've seen it on the coast of California hunting gophers out in pastures. So the great blue heron can be in a lot of different places. This is really truly an amazing bird. Or example, if you're in the America Southwest and you're seeing something running across the ground like the greater roadrunner, it helps you identify that bird. So let's show up that greater roadrunner. And that habitat being in a high desert is a good thing to help identify that bird by also. So habitats are really another way to help you identify your birds too. So, mhm. um,
Sorry, we're not quite keeping up with you, Stan. And folks,
oh,
this
that's
is our
quite
first
okay.
time doing a split screen here. Please bear with us. There you go.
There's your roadrunner. These are amazing birds, by the way, highly intelligent birds. A lot of people who are lucky enough to have them in their backyards can train these birds to come in, and they feed them, and it's just really, really fun to have these birds around. They're a lot larger than you actually think that they are when you see them, and of course they're very fast too.
I didn't realize the detail to them. I have to tell you, Margaret Cobain is up close to you, and she does the ornaments for us that we do National Wildlife Federation. And I'm going to send you one of her first Roadrunners. We're launching them this year. we just got the painted models in as a memento for you being with us on this tonight. Okay.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So kind of moving along in our levels of identification, if you will, um, uh, learning to identify birds by flight pattern is another one. That is something that is when you're like, as a trip leader, you have to identify birds quickly and get them. Having that, watching the flight pattern of a bird really tells a lot about a bird. It really tells you the identification of it. And the classic one of that, of course, is when you see a large bird flying and you're trying to figure out, is that a bald eagle, is that a turkey vulture, a black vulture, what is it? So let's show the bald eagle picture. And you when you look at it, sometimes the lighting is terrible. They're up near the sun and you really can't see them. So it's really difficult. So shape, or the way it's flying, is very, very helpful in that case. So you're always going to see with the bald eagles that they're going to have a fairly level or flat wings, and they have them out to the side. I think I sent another bald eagle picture. Let's bring that one up also. And that is a great way to help identify it. And we're identifying or we're differentiating that between bald eagles and, say, for example, turkey vultures, who are going to hold their wings up in more of a kind of an upward pattern. And they fly completely differently too. Their wing strokes are very differently. I have suddenly feel like I want to show you, because a lot of these big birds like great blue herons, when they fly with their wings cupped like this, kind of like on the sides, and they go, so it's like this, their wing is up and down, and it looks like they have little cups that they're doing. They don't actually make full wing flaps, if you will. So when a great blue heron's flying, it's very, very different. They've got like a 4-foot wingspan, 5-foot wingspan, similar to like a bald eagle or a turkey vulture or something. And yet the way its flight pattern is very different. Also, your great blue heron's never going to be soaring. It doesn't soar like the eagle does or the turkey vulture does too. And so flight patterns is a big way to help everyone learn their birds. And again, this comes from repetition, comes from just watching those birds and studying them. Mel, you cannot beat a good pair of binoculars or a spotting scope and time to just sit and observe. Watching is the great educator. It is fantastic to be able to sit there and just watch these things and learn. The one thing, and I probably say this at every talk that I give, you have to kind of, when you're watching nature, when you're watching birds, you have to kind of remove yourself from those kind of feelings of wanting to project your thoughts or emotions onto these birds. You want to watch them objectively. Watch it like a naturalist would watch it. Watch it with an open mind and for reasons that maybe are unknown to you. And that is really an important thing to do when you're watching these birds, because otherwise you start watching them and you start putting like human emotions or human kind of behaviors behind it. You're almost always going to kind of mess it up and get it wrong on that too. So that's kind of a good way to do it. Did we show the turkey vulture flying yet?
We haven't got him up yet.
Let's show that when we can.
Yeah, he's coming. He's been flying over the wind currents over my house enough. I told him yesterday, I'm not ready yet, rascal.
Yeah. So the vultures are awesome birds. They kind of get a bad rap, but I think they do just a fantastic job. So, and then there's other things like, you get a lot of these soaring birds, these flying birds. You got to look at the shape of their wing too. A turkey vulture is going to have a pretty broad wing, and so will a bald eagle. But a peregrine falcon, on the other hand, is going to have a nice narrow wing and pointed on the end. Very, very different looking from all these other flying birds. Or, for example, an osprey. Ospreys are going to have a crook in their wing. So anytime we can bring up show the peregrine
He's
or
the osprey right now.
they have like a bend at the wrist. Yeah, there you can see it there. And that bend in the wrist is a big help to identify when when a bird's in bad lighting and you're not quite sure exactly what it was. You don't have your binoculars with you. That overall shape should be just really obvious to you. You can see that wrist on these things too.
Excuse me for interrupting. So you're talking about, as I look at that wing halfway down, it bends there. Is that what you're speaking of?
Yeah. Whereas compared to like a bald eagle or even a turkey vulture, it's going to be straight
Okay.
on down the wing, where these guys sweep back just a little bit too. And then you look at the tip of the things. A lot of people will look at the primary feathers. You can see that on that picture. You see those little, they look like little fingertips sticking out there. Those are the
Yep.
primary feathers of this bird, the primary flight feathers. And they really don't have a lot to do with identifying birds. A lot of people confuse that. They think, well, it had the, there's separation out there. That really doesn't have much to do with any kind of identification. But if you look at the shape, the overall shape of the wing, you're going to see that it can be, if it's pointed, then it looks like a peregrine falcon. Maybe we could bring up the peregrine falcon picture here and take a look at the difference there. So that's a really big kind of help in identifying is the shape of the wing when they're flying, and the flight patterns are very, very helpful in our identification too. So,
Here comes the falcon.
all right, bring up that falcon there, peregrine
We'll be
falcon.
coming in just a second.
By the way, just a kind of interesting side note there. We have more peregrine falcons now. Look at that. I love those birds. We have more peregrine falcons now than we did probably pre-settlement time. The range of peregrine falcons has expanded. We've kind of made homes for them in our large cities. We've put nesting towers or nesting boxes up on big, tall high rises, and these birds are doing fantastic all across the country. So it's really neat to see a species who's actually doing a little bit better than what they than before we messed everything up, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then there's other ways of identifying birds kind of at a distance, if you will, and that is their posture, how they sit, and things like that. So let's bring up the red-tailed hawk. I have a picture of that, I believe. And that red-tailed hawk it has a real characteristic stance. The way all birds are going to stand there 2 feet, right? But it's a matter of how much they're leaning forward or standing upright. You can see the difference in those birds. And yeah, there's your red-tailed hawk. Red-tailed hawks tend to be more upright. They tend to be kind of more bolt upright as compared to, say, for example, even a bald eagle. And owls are very, very different. Also, owls will have more of an upright position too. And you can see that your hawks and your eagles are going to have a small head and well-defined shoulders as compared to owls. Owls have a big, round, puffy head, and their head is about the same width as their shoulders. So you can automatically, just by the shape of it, be able to tell some of the raptors apart just by the way they're sitting too. So I think we can bring up the barred owl picture next. You'll give you get it. You can see real obvious shoulders on that red-tailed hawk. Whereas when the barred owl comes up, you'll see that it's kind of more of a barrel shape, the whole body, the whole darn thing, and that's very unique. See that? Look at that. Head's just as wide as its shoulders are.
We get those guys in our part of Mexico, Missouri, that is.
Yes, yes. It's a common bird throughout the United States, along with our great horned owl. And I actually have one of these at my nature center. He's a wonderful education bird too. Um, so general shapes of how they perch, shapes of their wings, the flight patterns, all these types of things are really helpful in identifying birds there too. And then, of course, lastly, identifying our birds by song. Song is when you can hear a bird and identify it. That is when you've reached another level in your bird identification. Now, I know, Mel, you do a really good job of being able to hear the birds and identify them. And it's really for me, I can hear birds. I don't even have to see them. Like this morning, I got to the nature center. I stepped out of my car and I immediately heard a blue-gray gnatcatcher. And I don't need to look up and see it. I heard it. I know it's there. And that is when you start identifying birds by sound, your level of birding jumps up dramatically, because you can do it. And then right after I heard the blue-gray gnatcatcher, then a great crested flycatcher sounded off, and I thought, oh, great crested flycatchers are back today. They arrived last night. They arrived, and they are here today. So because they weren't calling yesterday. and you immediately know right away. Great crested flycatchers and the blue-gray gnatcatchers are back, and you can, yeah, I mean, without
You
even
got
looking
old
up, you
Birdman
can tell.
Mello knows.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what I'm saying is learning the bird songs is really well worth your time and effort. And for a trip leader like myself, it's really handy when people are looking and they see something, but they don't know. If I can hear it, I can identify it, and that's really a big deal. Well, some people, though, as they age, not you or me, of course, Mel, but as we age, the top end of their hearing goes out, and they don't hear those high pitched calls. And there's a lot of different products out there to help people with that. A little bird, they're like hearing aids you put in. It helps you regain that high end. You can hear those birds when you're out birding too. So, funny thing though, let me just make a comment or two about bird songs. Here in North America, the vast majority of our male birds are the singers, and the females don't. And that's pretty much normal for us. But worldwide, that is not the case. So there's an anomaly here in North America where our females don't sing as much as the females do in other species around the world. So that's really kind of an interesting thing that predominantly the males are the ones who sing here in North America. However, there are a lot of species that do have males and females that sing here. Can you think of any?
Orioles?
And cardinals are another good one too.
Yeah, they do.
Uh,
That's correct.
yeah,
Although he's pretty dominant, but she'll chirp in a little.
yeah, and they'll sing back and forth in a duet song. What's really interesting about it is that they sing the same song. To our ears, they sound the same. But when you record them and you examine the recording under a spectrograph, you can see that they're actually singing very different songs. So even though it's the same sounding to you and me, presumably they're hearing a very different song. And that's really pretty darn neat.
Yeah, I wish I knew everything they were saying. I don't know if she is saying it's your time to take out the garbage or what, but
Yes, yeah. That is something that it would be interesting. We've always speculated as to what songs mean. We've always said the traditional things like, well, it's to defend a territory, it's to attract a mate, so on and so forth. But it really would be great to be able to sit down, interview a bird, and say, all right, give it to me straight. What are you
yeah.
saying here? What is it you're actually saying? And that would be really neat to know, because that would be spectacular. It really would be.
I've got to ask you before we leave, what's
Yeah.
your favorite bird where you live, and what's your favorite bird that when you travel?
Boy, that's asking like, what's your favorite child, right?
I know it's tough.
Yeah. So I've been asked that question many times, and I kind of cop out on the whole thing and say I have a group of birds that I really like, and that is the hummingbirds. The hummingbirds are a group of birds that I find just absolutely amazing. They're a fairly large family, 420 some species of hummingbirds in the world. It's a big family. They're only found in the New World, which means they're only found here in the Americas, North, Central, and South America, which is really amazing. I have a lot of Europeans who come over to do tours with me, and when they see those hummingbirds, they can't believe it. It's just like, holy mackerel, look at that. It's so small and so fast and all that. So
Yeah,
I have a special place in my heart for hummingbirds. I really do.
that's a good pick. When we've been blessed to travel in Europe, and I see some of those open-throated plants over in those gardens, and I'm like, God, why didn't you have them over here? It seems
Yeah.
like that's a missing part of the perfect world. But
Yeah.
I can imagine those guys when they come over with you just got to be totally amazed.
Yeah. And it's fun to show people lots of new birds, they're just, buckets of new birds for them. That's really a lot of fun. Lastly, I guess, Mel, can I mention that I've been really busy lately. I've been putting together a lot of my bird books. Have been out for a long time now, and I've been working on third editions for them. I've got a lot of new ones, like the Birds of Wisconsin third edition, uh, Birds of Ohio third edition. Lots of new ones are out there right now, and I'm really excited to mention things like I got the Kids Guide to the Birds of Texas is now out, and the Kids Guide to the Birds of Georgia is also out. And so these are fun books. Actually, the Georgia and Texas will be coming out in July, so they're coming soon to you. So these are books designed just for kids to learn how to identify their birds. That's the best way to do it. Start when you're young, and you can have a lifetime of enjoying birds.
we've got the ones that you've put out so far, of course, here for our bird dealers to buy and then have for the audience out there.
Hmm.
But I want to encourage you to continue to do those. I'm hoping we sell enough Birds of Missouri field guides that one of these days we get a Kids of Missouri. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. Kids in Missouri
Okay.
coming up.
Okie doke. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, Stan, I thank you very, very much for your time with us. If we've had any questions that we haven't fed you, we'll get those to you. And folks, just stay tuned and check out the post on Birdman Mel, and we'll answer your questions. We'll pass them on to Stan, and I know you'll be glad to help us out back with them. And I just want to thank you very, very much again, Stan. I can't help but look down. They got him here in front of me on the screen, and I miss Orasco. He does come here to Mexico, Missouri. We are blessed to host the Wild Bird Expo, where all of the best birding retailers in the world come. And I got to tell you, folks, it's the one session that's always standing room only. So we're lucky to have him one-on-one in your living room tonight. So Stan, thank you so much again. And we look forward to having you back here in Mexico, Missouri. And this is one of the guys, folks, when you give a hard question to me, I turn to Stan and he'll bail me out.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And who you got there?
This is Rusty, my fuzzy boy.
All right. Well, Rusty, thanks for
joining.
joining us. And I know he's an indoor cat, so that's my favorite kind.
Absolutely. He's definitely
Absolutely right.
Yeah, Mel, thank you. I mean, this is really awesome, and what a great format! What a great way to reach out to everybody, especially in this time where we're spending so much time at home. This is really a fantastic venue, and I really want to say thank you for letting me be on with you.
Well, we're very welcome, and who knows? As it goes on, we'll have some. We're going to have some children's programs in the future at different times, and we may very well hit you back up for one of those and utilize one of your bird children's books to help teach a lesson sometime. Would that be all right? I just sprung that on you.
I'd love to come back and talk about hummingbirds. That would be the way to go.
Okay, yeah, and we can just do hummingbirds. And our audience is growing. We've got them from all over the country now. So, we did a survey this week, folks, and you guys mentioned you wanted to learn more about hummingbirds. So, Stan, we'll take a look at that. Okay.
Sounds great. I'm thinking it's wonderful. I'm also reading on the side here all the different places people checking in from. Very exciting to see that. Fantastic.
Okay. Well, thank you, folks, for tuning in, Stan. They've taught me I got to run a tight ship. I don't like that. I used to go 45 minutes. They said, Birdman, you got to learn to be quiet and know when to say bye. So I guess we'll get close here and wrap it up. Do want to remind everybody, a week from tonight, we're going to have the folks from Sheltered Wings, and they're going to go through the basics of how do you decide what kind of binoculars to start with, young, old, beginners, and as you graduate, what to go into. And it's not a sales pitch. It's just like what we did today, a good way to learn it. It'll be 1 week from tonight. And then Saturday, I look forward to having you on the Birdman Mel session at 10 o'clock Central Time. We're going to have some fun. A lot of folks have said, oh, my God, Mel, I go in the store and there's tubes and there's trays and there's, God almighty, there's a row of bird seed a mile long. How do I know what to buy? And we'll do our best to debunk those myths. And it won't be a sales pitch. It'll be some seeds, I'll tell you, unless you live in the Southwest. You maybe don't want to do that Milo stuff because we breed it where the birds don't eat it. So we'll do some things like that, and we'll have some fun. But Stan, I always close all my sessions the same way, and it's two different things I tell folks, and it's a lot like what you said. One of them is, folks, don't forget, set somewhere with a child, a grandchild, just spend 5 minutes, go out there and listen and touch and hear and feel. And then, don't forget in these times, as I always send all my emails, nature is a stress reliever from God. Take time today to listen to the birds sing. Folks, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you Saturday at 10 Central Time.